Dear family of faith, today we gather in a sacred moment of prayer, united across distances and circumstances, to lift our hearts to Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle of Jesus Christ and powerful intercessor before the throne of God. You who are listening to this prayer are not here by accident, because heaven itself has drawn you to this moment, where hope is being rekindled and faith is being awakened once more. If your heart feels heavy because of financial pressure, lack of work, unpaid debts, closed doors, or situations that appear humanly impossible, know that this prayer rises especially for you. Saint Jude Thaddeus is known throughout the world as the patron of impossible and desperate causes, and countless souls have witnessed miracles through his intercession when all hope seemed lost. With humility, trust, and expectation, let us begin this prayer journey together, believing that God is already at work even before the miracle becomes visible. Before we enter deeply into this prayer, I invite you, as a powerful act of faith and unity, to write in the comments these words from your heart. Saint Jude Thaddeus, intercede for me in my financial and impossible situation. By doing this, you are not merely typing words, but you are proclaiming your trust in God and opening your heart to divine intervention. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, I invite you to do so now. Activate the notification bell and share this prayer with someone who may be silently suffering under financial burdens or professional uncertainty. Together we are forming a chain of faith, prayer, and miracles, where no cry is ignored and no tear goes unseen. United as one family, we now place our trust in God, who works wonders through the intercession of Saint Jude Thaddeus. Let us begin this prayer with reverence and devotion, placing ourselves in the presence of God and under the protection of heaven. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, we open our hearts to grace and divine mercy. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle and friend of our Lord Jesus Christ, today I come before you with a heart that longs for relief, provision, and breakthrough. You were chosen by Christ to walk beside him, to witness his miracles, and to proclaim his truth, even in the face of rejection and hardship. Because of your unwavering faith and courage, the Church recognizes you as the powerful intercessor for those who face impossible and desperate situations. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I approach you today with humility, acknowledging that my strength alone is not enough to overcome the challenges before me. You know the weight of my worries, the anxiety that fills my thoughts, and the fear that arises when resources are scarce and solutions seem unreachable. I place before you my need for financial stability, dignified work, and the ability to provide for myself and my loved ones, without fear or shame. You understand the pain of those who strive honestly yet see no results, and the discouragement of those who knock on doors that remain closed. With trust, I ask you to carry my petitions before the merciful heart of Jesus. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, you who never abandon those who call upon you with faith, look upon my current situation with compassion. You see the bills that accumulate, the responsibilities that weigh heavily on my shoulders, and the nights of restless worry that disturb my peace. You know how deeply I desire honest work, stable income, and freedom from financial oppression that limits my ability to live fully and serve God joyfully. I ask you to intercede so that new opportunities may arise, unexpected doors may open, and divine provision may flow into my life, according to God's perfect plan. Strengthen my heart, so that despair may not take root and fear may not steal my hope. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of the afflicted and helper of the desperate, I entrust to you every impossible case I am facing. There are situations in my life that logic cannot resolve and human effort cannot fix. Yet I believe that nothing is impossible for God. Where resources are lacking, I ask that divine abundance may manifest. Where work is absent, I ask that dignified employment may appear. Where debts and obligations suffocate, I ask that relief, wisdom, and solutions may come forth by the grace of heaven. In this sacred moment, I also place before you my family and those who depend on me. You know how deeply financial hardship affects relationships, peace within the home, and emotional stability. I ask you to protect my household from division, anxiety, and hopelessness caused by material lack. May my home be filled with trust in God, mutual support, and the certainty that the Lord provides for His children. Intercede so that my family may witness not only provision, but also the strengthening of faith through this trial. Saint Jude Thaddeus, you remained faithful even when others turned away, and you trusted God even when the path was uncertain. Teach me to persevere when progress seems slow and answers delayed. Grant me patience when waiting becomes difficult and courage when discouragement tries to overcome me. Help me to continue working honestly, seeking opportunities diligently, and trusting God completely, even when results are not immediate. May my actions reflect faith and my words proclaim hope. Glorious Apostle of Christ, I surrender to you my fears about the future. The uncertainty of tomorrow often clouds my thoughts and weakens my confidence, but I choose today to trust in God's providence. I ask that you help me release anxiety and replace it with peace that comes from knowing God is in control. Guide my decisions so that I may act wisely and responsibly, aligning my choices with God's will. Protect me from despair and lead me toward clarity, direction, and renewed strength. Saint Jude Thaddeus, intercessor of miracles, I ask you to present my professional life before the Lord. Bless my efforts, my skills, my talents, and my willingness to work. Remove obstacles that hinder progress, and open paths that I cannot see on my own. Where rejection has wounded me, bring healing and renewed confidence. Where failure has discouraged me, bring lessons that lead to growth and eventual success. Beloved Saint, I also pray for all those who are listening to this prayer and sharing this moment of faith. Many are burdened by unemployment, unfair treatment, financial injustice, and overwhelming responsibilities. Some carry silent shame because they cannot provide as they wish, while others feel forgotten by society and overlooked by opportunity. I ask you to intercede for each of them, that God may remember their faithfulness and respond with mercy, provision, and restoration. Unite us all under the promise that God never abandons His children. Saint Jude Thaddeus, you are known throughout generations as the patron of impossible causes, because you reveal God's power when human strength fails. I ask you to renew my trust so that I may not give up when circumstances seem unchanged. Help me to believe that even delays are part of God's timing and that every trial carries a hidden blessing. Strengthen my faith so that I may continue praying, working and hoping with perseverance. Let my heart remain open to miracles that may arrive in unexpected ways. I place before you my dreams, Saint Jude Thaddeus, dreams that have been postponed, interrupted, or nearly abandoned because of financial hardship. You know how painful it is to feel stuck, unable to move forward, despite effort and desire. I ask that you breathe new life into these dreams, if they align with God's will. Grant me the means, opportunities, and support needed to rebuild what has been lost. May hope rise again, where disappointment once lived. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful companion in suffering, I ask you to walk with me through this season of testing. Do not allow me to feel alone or forgotten. Remind me daily that God sees my struggle and hears every prayer spoken in faith. Help me to recognize small signs of grace along the way, so that gratitude may grow even before the full miracle arrives. Strengthen my spirit so that I may endure with dignity and trust. I ask you, Saint Jude Thaddeus, to protect me from bitterness and resentment that can arise during financial hardship. Guard my heart against envy, anger, and comparison, which only deepen wounds and obscure faith. Teach me to rejoice in the blessings of others without losing hope in my own journey. Grant me a generous spirit, even in lack, so that I may reflect the love of Christ in every circumstance. May my character be refined, not hardened through this trial. Beloved Apostle, I surrender to you the moments when I feel overwhelmed and tempted to give up. You know how exhaustion can weaken resolve, and how repeated disappointment can erode confidence. I ask you to renew my strength when mine is depleted. Carry my prayers to the Lord when my words feel insufficient. Help me to rise again each day with courage, trusting that God's help is closer than I realize. Saint Jude Thaddeus, powerful intercessor before God, I ask you to align my desires with divine wisdom. If there are paths I must release and new ones I must embrace, grant me clarity and obedience. Help me to trust that God's plan, even when different from my own, leads to greater good and lasting peace. Remove confusion and replace it with discernment, so that I may walk forward with confidence. May every step I take be guided by faith and hope. As I continue this prayer, Saint Jude Thaddeus, I reaffirm my trust in your powerful intercession. I believe that you hear me, that you care, and that you faithfully present my needs before the heart of Jesus. Even now, I choose to believe that heaven is already moving on my behalf. Strengthen my resolve to continue praying and trusting, regardless of what I see. May my faith grow stronger with every word spoken and every moment spent in prayer. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I place my life, my work, my finances, and my future into your hands with confidence. I choose hope over fear, faith over doubt, and trust over despair. Remain with me as I continue this journey of prayer, guiding my steps and sustaining my heart. Let this moment mark the beginning of renewal, provision, and transformation according to God's will. I trust that what I have placed before you today is safe in the hands of heaven. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, in this sacred continuation of prayer, I come once more before you with a heart that remains open, vulnerable, and expectant of God's mercy. I do not come because everything is resolved, but precisely because many questions remain unanswered and many doors still appear closed. You understand the tension between faith and waiting, between hope and visible reality, and you never turn away those who persevere in prayer. With humility, I renew my trust in your powerful intercession, believing that every moment of prayer draws heaven closer to my situation. Remain near me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to entrust my life into your care. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful witness of Christ's love and truth, you walked with the Lord through moments of joy and moments of hardship. You knew what it meant to follow Jesus without certainty of comfort, trusting fully in God's plan even when the path was demanding. In the same spirit, I offer you my daily struggles related to work, finances, and stability, which weigh heavily upon my heart. There are responsibilities that feel overwhelming and expectations that seem impossible to meet, yet I refuse to surrender to despair. I ask you to help me remain anchored in faith, knowing that God's providence never fails. Beloved apostle and servant of God, I present to you the invisible burdens that many do not see but that consume my thoughts and energy. Financial pressure often brings fear, self-doubt, and a sense of inadequacy that threatens inner peace and confidence. You know how easily the mind becomes restless when provision seems uncertain and tomorrow feels unpredictable. I ask you to intercede so that calm may replace anxiety and trust may overcome fear. Teach me to rely not on my limited understanding, but on God's infinite wisdom and perfect timing. Saint Jude Thaddeus, patron of difficult and impossible causes, I lift before you my professional life and every effort I make to improve my situation. You see the applications sent, the interviews awaited, the projects attempted, and the hard work that often goes unnoticed. At times it feels as though my efforts yield no fruit, and discouragement tries to convince me that progress is impossible. I ask you to present my labor to the Lord, so that it may be blessed, multiplied, and guided according to His will. May my perseverance be rewarded with opportunities that align with God's purpose for my life. Holy Intercessor, I bring before you the wounds caused by rejection, delay, and repeated disappointment. Each closed door leaves behind a quiet pain that challenges confidence and faith. Yet I believe God uses even rejection to redirect His children toward greater good. Help me not to internalize failure or allow past setbacks to define my future. Grant me the grace to rise again with renewed determination and humility. May every disappointment become a stepping stone rather than an obstacle on my path. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of the afflicted, I also pray for wisdom in managing what God has already entrusted to me. Financial hardship often requires difficult decisions, sacrifice, and discipline that test patience and resilience. I ask you to guide me toward responsible choices that honor God and protect my future. Help me to avoid impulsive actions driven by fear or desperation. Grant me clarity and prudence so that I may steward my resources wisely while trusting God for what I cannot control. Beloved Apostle, I surrender to you the moments when comparison steals joy and envy threatens peace. In times of need, it is easy to measure oneself against others and feel left behind or forgotten. I ask you to guard my heart against resentment and replace it with gratitude for every blessing, seen and unseen. Teach me to rejoice sincerely in the success of others while trusting that God's plan for me is unique and purposeful. May contentment grow in my heart, even as I continue to pray for breakthrough. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion of the suffering, I ask you to help me maintain integrity and honesty in every situation. Financial pressure can tempt the heart toward shortcuts, compromises, or actions that conflict with God's commandments. I desire to remain faithful, choosing righteousness even when it appears to delay relief. Strengthen my conscience so that I may never sacrifice my values for temporary gain. May my trust in God's justice sustain me through moments of temptation and uncertainty. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I place before you the emotional toll that financial stress brings upon relationships and personal well-being. Worry often creates tension within families, distances hearts, and diminishes joy. I ask you to intercede for healing where stress has caused misunderstandings or conflict. Restore peace within my home and strengthen bonds weakened by hardship. May love, patience, and compassion prevail over frustration and fear. Saint Jude Thaddeus, Apostle of Hope, I pray for renewed strength when exhaustion weighs heavily on my body and spirit. There are days when effort feels endless and rest seems elusive. Yet I know God does not desire his children to live without peace. I ask you to bring moments of rest and restoration into my life. Help me recognize when to pause, pray, and trust, rather than push forward in anxiety. Renew my energy so that I may continue with perseverance and faith. Beloved intercessor, I entrust to you my sense of self-worth, which is often challenged by financial instability or professional uncertainty. The world measures value by success and income, yet God sees the heart and honors faithfulness. Remind me that my worth is rooted in being a child of God, not in material status or temporary achievement. Help me resist voices that diminish my dignity or question my purpose. May I stand firm in the truth that I am loved, valued, and guided by the Lord. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to intercede for clarity of direction during moments of confusion. When choices seem overwhelming and the right path unclear, I ask for divine guidance. Help me recognize opportunities that are truly from God and avoid paths that lead away from his will. Grant me discernment so that my decisions may be guided by faith rather than fear. May every step forward be taken with trust and prayer. Holy Apostle, I also pray for courage to ask for help when needed and humility to receive it with gratitude. Financial hardship can isolate the heart, making it difficult to admit vulnerability or accept support. Teach me that seeking help is not a sign of weakness, but an expression of trust in God's provision through others. Open my heart to community, support, and encouragement. May I both receive and offer compassion in times of need. Saint Jude Thaddeus, patron of hope, I ask you to help me recognize God's presence even in small blessings that appear along the way. When miracles seem delayed, subtle signs of grace often sustain faith and renew strength. Open my eyes to these moments so that gratitude may replace discouragement. Teach me to celebrate progress, however small, as evidence that God is working. May thanksgiving become a constant attitude within my heart. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I entrust to you my future plans and aspirations. Financial difficulty often forces dreams to be postponed or reimagined, which can bring sadness and frustration. I ask you to help me surrender my plans to God's wisdom without losing hope. If dreams must be reshaped, may they emerge stronger and more aligned with divine purpose. Grant me patience to wait and courage to act when the time is right. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of Christ, I ask you to strengthen my prayer life during this season of trial. When answers seem slow, prayer can feel heavy or repetitive, yet I know it remains powerful and effective. Help me persevere in prayer, even when emotions fluctuate. Teach me to trust that God hears every word spoken in faith. May prayer become my refuge rather than my last resort. Glorious Apostle, I lift before you all those who share this prayer and walk a similar path of uncertainty and need. Many feel unseen, unheard, and overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control. I ask you to intercede for each one, that God may respond according to his mercy and wisdom. Unite us in hope and strengthen our collective faith. May none of us feel alone as we continue this journey of trust. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I renew my confidence in your powerful intercession and your constant presence beside those who suffer. I believe that heaven continues to move even when progress is not immediately visible. Help me to remain steadfast, trusting that God's timing is perfect and his plans are always good. Strengthen my heart as I continue forward in prayer and perseverance. May this continuation of prayer deepen my faith and prepare me for the blessings yet to come. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, once again I come before you with a heart that refuses to give up, even when the weight of waiting feels heavy and the answers seem distant. I remain here in prayer because I believe that persistence is an act of faith, and that every word spoken with trust rises like incense before God. You know how easily discouragement tries to settle in when change does not come quickly, yet you also know how powerful perseverance becomes when joined with hope. I ask you to help me remain faithful in this season of uncertainty, trusting that God is still working beyond what I can see. Stay close to me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to place my life in God's hands. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle who endured trials without abandoning Christ. You understand the struggle of remaining firm when the path feels unclear. There are moments when fear whispers that nothing will change and that effort is meaningless. Yet I choose to believe otherwise. I bring before you my inner battles, the doubts that rise in silence, and the questions that disturb my peace. Help me quiet these voices with faith and replace them with confidence in God's promises. May your example of loyalty and courage strengthen my resolve. Beloved intercessor, I ask you to look with compassion upon the emotional fatigue that accompanies prolonged financial and professional hardship. The constant worry about provision can drain joy and cloud hope, making each day feel like an uphill struggle. You see how stress affects not only my mind but also my body and spirit, leaving me weary and vulnerable. I ask you to intercede for renewal and inner healing, so that strength may return and peace may be restored. Help me to find rest in God, even when circumstances remain challenging. Saint Jude Thaddeus, patron of impossible cases, I lift to you the situations that appear completely beyond resolution. There are obstacles that seem immovable, problems that defy logic, and circumstances that human effort cannot change. Yet I know that what is impossible for man is possible for God, and that your intercession brings divine power into hopeless situations. I ask you to present these cases before the Lord with urgency and compassion. May God's will manifest in ways that surpass understanding and restore hope where none seems possible. Holy Apostle, I place before you the fear of failure that sometimes paralyzes my actions and weakens my confidence. Financial instability often magnifies self-doubt, making every decision feel risky and every step uncertain. I ask you to help me act with courage rather than fear, trusting that God guides those who seek Him sincerely. Teach me to move forward with faith even when certainty is absent. May boldness replace hesitation as I continue to pursue honest work and stability. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of the afflicted, I ask you to protect my heart from hopelessness that can quietly grow during prolonged trials. Hopelessness drains motivation and dims faith, yet I choose to resist it through prayer and trust. Intercede so that hope may be renewed daily, even when circumstances remain unchanged. Help me remember past moments when God carried me through difficulty and restored my strength. May those memories sustain me now as I wait for new blessings. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I surrender to you the burden of expectations, both my own and those imposed by others. Financial and professional challenges often carry social pressure, judgment, and misunderstanding that deepen emotional pain. I ask you to free me from the need to prove my worth or measure my value by external standards. Help me find peace in knowing that God sees my efforts and honors my faithfulness. May inner freedom replace the weight of comparison and expectation. Saint Jude Thaddeus, Apostle of Christ's truth, I pray for wisdom to recognize opportunities that align with God's plan for me. Sometimes doors open that appear promising, but lead away from peace or integrity, while other opportunities require patience and trust. I ask you to guide my discernment so that I may choose paths that honor God and promote lasting good. Remove confusion and replace it with clarity and confidence. May every decision be rooted in prayer and trust. Holy Intercessor, I ask you to intercede for those moments when impatience threatens to take hold. Waiting can be one of the most difficult trials, especially when needs are urgent and solutions delayed. Teach me to wait without bitterness and to trust without resentment. Help me to see waiting not as punishment, but as preparation for greater blessings. May patience become a source of strength rather than frustration. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion in suffering, I ask you to help me maintain gratitude, even in times of lack. Gratitude shifts the heart from despair to hope and opens the spirit to God's presence. Help me recognize the blessings that remain, such as health, relationships, and the gift of faith itself. May gratitude protect my heart from negativity and strengthen my trust in God's goodness. Let thanksgiving become a constant prayer within me. Beloved Apostle, I lift before you the silent prayers spoken in the depths of my heart, those words too heavy or personal to oppress aloud. You know the desires, fears, and longings that remain hidden from others, but are fully known to God. I ask you to carry these silent prayers before the Lord with tenderness and urgency. May God respond according to His mercy and wisdom. Help me trust that even unspoken prayers are heard and valued. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I pray for resilience during moments when discouragement tries to overshadow faith. There are days when progress seems invisible and effort feels wasted, yet I know that God is never idle. Intercede so that resilience may grow stronger with each challenge. Help me to rise again after disappointment and continue forward with renewed determination. May perseverance become a testimony of faith rather than a burden. Holy Apostle, I ask you to intercede for healing from past financial or professional trauma that continues to influence my present. Past failures, losses, or injustices can leave scars that affect confidence and decision-making. I ask you to help me release these wounds into God's hands for healing and renewal. May the past no longer dictate my future or limit my faith. Grant me freedom to move forward with confidence and hope. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of hope, I ask you to strengthen my trust in God's timing. Delays often feel like denial, yet I know that God's timing is perfect and purposeful. Help me surrender my urgency into God's care without losing expectation. Teach me to trust that when the right moment arrives, the blessing will be complete and lasting. May patience and trust walk hand in hand within my heart. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I also pray for the grace to remain generous in spirit, even during times of need. Financial difficulty can narrow the heart, making it difficult to think beyond personal survival. Help me remain open to the needs of others and willing to share encouragement, kindness, and prayer. May generosity flow from faith rather than abundance. Let love remain active in my life regardless of circumstance. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful intercessor, I entrust to you the fear of uncertainty that often shadows my thoughts about the future. Uncertainty can weaken resolve and cloud vision, yet I choose to place my future in God's hands. Help me to trust that God holds tomorrow and prepares what I cannot foresee. Replace anxiety with confidence, rooted in faith. May hope illuminate my path even when it is not fully visible. Holy Apostle, I lift before you all those who are journeying through similar trials of financial hardship and professional uncertainty. Many feel isolated and discouraged, unsure of where to turn or how to proceed. I ask you to intercede for each one, that God may bring provision, guidance, and peace into their lives. Unite us in prayer and strengthen our collective faith. May none of us feel alone as we continue to seek God's help. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I renew my trust in your powerful intercession and your constant presence alongside those who suffer. I believe that every prayer offered with faith draws heaven closer and prepares the way for divine intervention. Help me remain steadfast and hopeful as I continue this journey of prayer. Strengthen my heart for what lies ahead and prepare me for the blessings God has in store. May this continued prayer deepen my faith and sustain my spirit. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I come before you again with a heart that is learning to trust more deeply, even when the road remains long and the answers still unfold slowly. In this moment of prayer, I acknowledge that perseverance itself is a gift that must be renewed daily, especially when challenges continue without immediate relief. You know how the soul can grow weary when hope is tested repeatedly. Yet you also know how faith matures through steadfast endurance. I ask you to strengthen my spirit so that discouragement may not take root, and so that trust may grow stronger with every passing day. Remain beside me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to walk this path with faith. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle and witness to the power of Christ, you understood that following the Lord required courage even when comfort was absent. There were moments when danger surrounded you and uncertainty threatened your mission, yet you never retreated from your calling. In the same way, I ask you to help me remain faithful to my responsibilities and commitments, even when circumstances are difficult. Grant me courage to continue working honestly, seeking solutions diligently, and trusting God completely. May your example inspire me to move forward with strength and conviction. Beloved intercessor, I place before you the inner conflicts that arise when faith and fear wrestle within my heart. Fear often magnifies problems and obscures solutions, making it difficult to see beyond the present struggle. I ask you to help me silence fear through prayer and replace it with confidence in God's promises. Teach me to recognize fear as a passing emotion rather than a guiding force. May faith become the lens through which I view every challenge. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of those who feel overwhelmed, I ask you to look upon the emotional toll that ongoing financial and professional stress can bring. Stress can quietly erode joy, strain relationships, and diminish self-worth. If left unchecked, I ask you to intercede so that peace may guard my heart and mind, even when circumstances remain unresolved. Help me to find moments of calm and reassurance through prayer and trust. May God's peace sustain me beyond human understanding. Holy Apostle, I bring before you the burden of responsibility that weighs heavily on my shoulders, especially when others depend on me for support and stability. The pressure to provide can become overwhelming and lead to feelings of inadequacy or guilt when resources are limited. I ask you to remind me that God does not measure my worth by material success, but by faithfulness and love. Help me release the weight of unrealistic expectations and embrace God's grace. May humility and trust replace anxiety and self-judgment. Saint Jude Thaddeus, patron of impossible causes, I lift to you the moments when obstacles appear insurmountable and progress feels unattainable. There are challenges that seem fixed and immovable, yet I believe that God's power surpasses all limitations. I ask you to carry these seemingly impossible situations before the Lord with urgency and faith. May divine solutions emerge where human logic fails. Let hope rise again in places where it has nearly faded. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me cultivate resilience during times when setbacks occur repeatedly. Repeated disappointment can weaken motivation and drain enthusiasm, making it difficult to continue striving forward. I ask you to renew my strength so that setbacks do not define my journey. Teach me to view challenges as opportunities for growth rather than signs of failure. May resilience become a testimony of God's sustaining grace in my life. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful companion of the suffering, I pray for clarity when confusion clouds my decisions and direction. Uncertainty can create hesitation and fear of making the wrong choice, especially when the stakes feel high. I ask you to guide my thoughts and actions so that I may choose wisely and confidently. Help me discern God's guidance, even when it comes quietly or unexpectedly. May wisdom illuminate my path step by step. Holy Intercessor, I entrust to you the moments when patience feels depleted and frustration threatens to dominate my heart. Waiting can test faith more than action, especially when needs are urgent and solutions delayed. I ask you to help me wait with grace rather than resentment. Teach me to trust that God's timing is purposeful and precise. May patience become a source of inner peace rather than distress. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me remain anchored in gratitude even during prolonged trials. Gratitude protects the heart from bitterness and keeps faith alive amid uncertainty. Help me recognize the blessings that persist even in difficult seasons, such as health, relationships, and the gift of prayer. May gratitude shift my focus from what is lacking to what is already given. Let thanksgiving strengthen my trust in God's provision. Beloved Apostle, I place before you the silent worries that surface late at night when the mind revisits unresolved concerns. These moments of quiet can amplify fear and doubt if left unchecked. I ask you to intercede so that peace may fill these moments instead of anxiety. Help me surrender my worries to God before rest. May divine calm replace restless thoughts and bring restorative sleep. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of hope, I pray for healing from discouragement caused by prolonged uncertainty. Discouragement can slowly weaken resolve and make effort feel meaningless. I ask you to help me recognize discouragement as a challenge to be overcome through prayer and trust. Renew my hope so that I may continue forward with confidence. May hope become a steady light guiding me through uncertainty. Holy Apostle, I ask you to intercede for renewed motivation when exhaustion diminishes my drive. There are days when energy feels depleted and effort feels unrewarded. I ask you to restore my motivation through faith and reassurance. Help me take each day one step at a time without losing heart. May renewed strength flow from trusting in God's care. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of Christ, I pray for inner balance during times when stress threatens emotional and spiritual well-being. Prolonged difficulty can disrupt harmony and create imbalance if not addressed through prayer. I ask you to help me maintain equilibrium through trust in God and reliance on His grace. Teach me to care for my spirit as well as my responsibilities. May balance restore clarity and peace. Beloved Intercessor, I lift before you the desire to remain compassionate toward others, even when I am struggling myself. Hardship can narrow perspective and reduce empathy if not guarded by faith. I ask you to keep my heart open and generous despite difficulty. Help me offer kindness, encouragement and prayer to those around me. May love continue to flow through me regardless of circumstance. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to strengthen my trust in God's unseen work during seasons when visible progress is minimal. Often the most significant transformations occur quietly beneath the surface. Help me trust that God is preparing answers even when evidence is not immediate. Teach me to remain faithful without constant reassurance. May trust deepen as I wait. Holy Apostle, I also pray for the courage to adapt when circumstances require change or redirection. Sometimes God leads through unexpected paths that require letting go of familiar plans. I ask you to help me embrace change with faith rather than fear. Grant me flexibility and openness to new possibilities. May change become an instrument of growth rather than anxiety. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I lift before you all who continue this prayer journey alongside me, carrying their own burdens and uncertainties. Many face similar challenges related to work, finances and stability. I ask you to intercede for each one, that God may provide guidance, strength and hope. Unite us in perseverance and shared faith. May none of us feel abandoned as we continue to seek God's help. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I reaffirm my trust in your powerful intercession and your unwavering presence with those who persevere in prayer. I believe that God honors steadfast faith and responds according to his perfect wisdom. Help me continue forward with courage, patience, and trust. Prepare my heart for the blessings that will come in God's time. May this continued prayer strengthen my faith and sustain my hope. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, once again I lift my heart toward you with quiet determination, knowing that perseverance in prayer is itself a testimony of faith. I remain here not because all burdens have been lifted, but because trust grows stronger each time I return to God through your intercession. You know how waiting stretches the soul and how uncertainty tests endurance. Yet you also know that God never wastes a season of faithfulness. I ask you to renew my courage, so that weariness does not overcome my resolve. Walk beside me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to believe beyond what my eyes can see. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle and companion of Christ, you learned to trust God's plan, even when the destination was unclear. There were moments when your mission required courage beyond human strength, yet you relied fully on the grace of God. In the same way, I ask you to help me rely on divine strength when my own feels insufficient. Teach me to surrender control and trust that God directs every step, even when the path seems uncertain. May confidence in God's guidance replace fear of the unknown. Beloved intercessor, I place before you the discouragement that sometimes arises when progress feels slow and effort seems unrewarded. Repeated obstacles can quietly erode motivation and weaken hope if not confronted with faith. I ask you to intercede so that discouragement may not take root in my heart. Help me remember that God's timing differs from human expectations and that delay does not mean denial. May perseverance continue to grow within me despite challenges. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of those who struggle silently, I ask you to look upon the inner loneliness that financial and professional hardship can bring. Often the weight of responsibility must be carried quietly, without visible support or understanding from others. I ask you to remind me that I am never truly alone, because God walks with me through every trial. Strengthen my sense of connection to God and to the community of faith. May solitude become a place of encounter with God rather than isolation. Holy Apostle, I entrust to you the moments when fear of failure threatens to limit my actions and decisions. Fear can paralyze progress and prevent growth when allowed to dominate the heart. I ask you to help me act with courage, rooted in faith, rather than hesitation, driven by fear. Teach me to trust that God honors sincere effort, even when outcomes remain uncertain. May boldness guided by prayer replace timidity within me. Saint Jude Thaddeus, patron of hope in desperate situations. I bring before you the weight of financial responsibilities that often feels overwhelming. Bills, obligations, and expectations can create constant tension and drain peace if not surrendered to God. I ask you to help me release this burden into God's care without abandoning responsibility. Grant me peace amid uncertainty and wisdom in managing what is entrusted to me. May trust in God's provision sustain me daily. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me maintain integrity and honesty during times of pressure. When resources are limited, temptation may arise to compromise values or take paths that conflict with faith. I desire to remain faithful to God's commandments and trust that righteousness leads to lasting blessing. Strengthen my conscience so that integrity remains firm, regardless of circumstance. May faithfulness become my protection during trial. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of Christ, I pray for renewed clarity when confusion clouds my judgment. Decisions related to work and finances often feel urgent and complex, making it difficult to discern the right course of action. I ask you to guide my thoughts and calm my emotions so that clarity may emerge. Help me listen attentively to God's guidance rather than react impulsively to pressure. May wisdom replace confusion as I move forward. Holy Intercessor, I ask you to intercede for healing where stress has affected my emotional and physical well-being. Prolonged anxiety can weaken strength and diminish joy if not addressed through prayer and trust. I ask you to bring balance and restoration into my life. Help me recognize the importance of rest, prayer, and reflection amid responsibility. May healing flow into every area touched by stress. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion of those who endure hardship, I ask you to help me cultivate patience when answers are delayed. Waiting often tests faith more than action, yet I know that God works even in silence. I ask you to teach me to wait without resentment and to trust without complaint. Help me see waiting as preparation rather than punishment. May patience become a source of peace and strength. Beloved Apostle, I place before you the desire to remain hopeful even when circumstances fluctuate unpredictably. Financial and professional instability can create emotional highs and lows that challenge consistency of faith. I ask you to help me remain steady and grounded in trust, regardless of external change. Teach me to anchor my hope in God rather than circumstances. May stability grow within my heart through faith. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to protect my heart from bitterness that can arise when expectations are unmet. Bitterness quietly erodes peace and weakens trust if allowed to grow. I ask you to replace resentment with understanding and grace. Help me forgive circumstances, people, and even myself for perceived failures. May freedom replace heaviness within my spirit. Holy Apostle, I entrust to you the moments when I feel tempted to compare my journey to others. Comparison often leads to discouragement and dissatisfaction, stealing joy from present blessings. I ask you to help me focus on my unique path and God's specific plan for my life. Teach me to rejoice sincerely in the success of others while trusting in my own unfolding story. May contentment guard my heart against comparison. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful intercessor, I pray for courage to adapt when circumstances require change. Sometimes God leads through unexpected paths that require letting go of familiar plans and embracing new directions. I ask you to help me accept change with trust rather than fear. Grant me openness to growth and transformation through transition. May change become a channel for blessing rather than anxiety. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me maintain compassion for others, even while carrying my own burdens. Hardship can narrow perspective and reduce empathy if faith does not guide the heart. I desire to remain kind, patient, and understanding toward those around me. Help me offer encouragement and prayer, even when I feel depleted. May love continue to flow through me in every circumstance. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I lift before you the desire to remain faithful in prayer when emotions fluctuate and motivation wanes. There are moments when prayer feels difficult or repetitive, yet I know its power remains constant. I ask you to strengthen my commitment to prayer during both hope and doubt. Teach me to trust that every prayer offered with sincerity is heard by God. May perseverance in prayer deepen my faith. Holy Apostle, I also pray for trust in God's unseen work during this season of uncertainty. Often the most important transformations occur quietly beyond immediate awareness. I ask you to help me believe that God is preparing answers even when progress is not visible. Strengthen my faith so that I may trust without constant reassurance. May hope continue to illuminate my path. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I place before you all who continue this prayer journey with me, each carrying personal struggles related to work, finances, and stability. Many feel weary, discouraged, and unsure of the future. I ask you to intercede for them so that God may provide strength, guidance, and hope. Unite us in perseverance and shared faith. May we continue forward together, trusting in God's mercy and time. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I return to you once more with a heart that is learning to remain steady, even when the waves of uncertainty continue to rise. This journey of prayer has become a place of refuge for my soul, where fear slowly loosens its grip and trust begins to take deeper root. You know how persistence in hardship reshapes the heart, teaching humility, patience, and reliance on God alone. I ask you to help me remain faithful in this inner work, so that my spirit is strengthened even before my circumstances change. Stay close to me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to walk forward in faith. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle of Christ, you lived a life that demanded courage long before comfort or reward appeared. You followed the Lord without guarantees, trusting that obedience would lead to fruit in God's time. In moments when my efforts feel unseen and my sacrifices unnoticed, remind me that God sees every act of faithfulness. Help me to continue doing what is right even when results are delayed. May my confidence rest not in outcomes, but in obedience to God's will. Beloved intercessor, I place before you the inner tension that arises when hope and fear coexist within the same heart. There are days when faith feels strong, and other days when doubt quietly returns, questioning whether change will ever come. I ask you to help me remain gentle with myself during these fluctuations, trusting that faith is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to trust despite it. Teach me to bring every doubt into prayer rather than allowing it to isolate me. May faith gradually outgrow fear through perseverance. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of those who feel trapped by circumstance, I lift before you situations in my life that feel restrictive and limiting. Financial hardship and professional uncertainty can make the future feel narrow and confined, as though options are disappearing rather than expanding. I ask you to intercede so that God may open new paths where none seem visible. Help me believe that limitations do not define my destiny, but rather prepare me for unexpected grace. May freedom of spirit arise even before external freedom appears. Holy Apostle, I ask you to intercede for emotional healing, where prolonged stress has left wounds within my heart. Constant worry can quietly harden the spirit and diminish joy if not surrendered to God. I ask you to soften my heart through peace and reassurance, allowing healing to unfold gently. Help me release accumulated tension and replace it with trust in divine care. May healing flow into every area touched by anxiety and fear. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion of those who carry heavy responsibilities, I ask you to look upon the weight of obligation that often feels overwhelming. The pressure to provide, to succeed, and to remain strong can become exhausting when resources are limited. I ask you to help me remember that God does not ask me to carry burdens alone. Teach me to place my responsibilities into God's hands without neglecting my duties. May shared trust replace lowly struggle. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me maintain hope when progress feels slow and results remain hidden. Slow seasons can test patience and tempt discouragement if hope is not actively nurtured. I ask you to renew my expectation that God's work often unfolds gradually and purposefully. Help me trust that each small step forward is meaningful, even if it seems insignificant. May hope remain alive through trust rather than visible proof. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful intercessor, I bring before you the challenge of maintaining balance during prolonged uncertainty. When stress persists, it can distort priorities and drain emotional and spiritual reserves. I ask you to help me establish healthy rhythms of prayer, rest, and effort that sustain my well-being. Teach me to recognize when to pause and entrust outcomes to God rather than striving endlessly. May balance restore clarity and peace within my life. Holy Apostle, I entrust to you the fear of making wrong decisions under pressure. Financial and professional stress often amplifies the fear of mistakes and consequences. I ask you to guide my discernment so that choices are made calmly and prayerfully. Help me trust that God can redeem even imperfect decisions when offered with sincerity. May courage replace paralysis and confidence replace fear. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of hope, I ask you to protect my heart from despair during moments when circumstances seem unchanged. Despair quietly erodes faith and weakens resolve if left unchecked. I ask you to intervene so that despair may not take root within me. Help me remember that God's timing is not a measure of his care. May hope stand firm even when evidence feels absent. Beloved Apostle, I place before you the longing for dignity that arises when work is scarce or unstable. The desire to contribute meaningfully and provide responsibly is deeply rooted in the human heart. I ask you to intercede so that opportunities aligned with my gifts and values may emerge. Help me maintain dignity and self-respect regardless of circumstance. May God honor honest effort with meaningful provision. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me remain compassionate toward myself. During times of struggle, self-criticism often grows during hardship, magnifying perceived failures and shortcomings. I ask you to help me see myself through God's eyes with mercy and understanding. Teach me to replace harsh judgment with patience and grace. May self-compassion strengthen my resilience. And Holy Intercessor, I pray for protection against discouraging thoughts that surface during moments of vulnerability. Negative thoughts can distort reality and weaken hope if allowed to dominate the mind. I ask you to help me recognize these thoughts and bring them into prayer. Replace them with truth grounded in God's promises. May my mind be guarded by peace and trust. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of Christ, I ask you to strengthen my trust in God's unseen preparation during this season. Often the groundwork for future blessings is laid quietly and invisibly. I ask you to help me believe that God is arranging circumstances beyond my awareness. Teach me to trust the process without demanding immediate evidence. May faith deepen through waiting. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I lift before you the desire to remain open to joy even while challenges persist. Joy does not deny difficulty, but it testifies to trust in God's goodness. I ask you to help me recognize moments of joy that still appear within my days. May laughter, gratitude, and peace find room within my heart. Let joy coexist with faith as a sign of hope. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to intercede for all those who continue this prayer alongside me, carrying heavy burdens related to work, finances, and uncertainty. Many feel weary and unseen, longing for reassurance and relief. I ask you to present their needs before God with compassion and urgency. Unite us in perseverance and shared hope. May we all be strengthened through faith and trust. Glory of Saint Jude Thaddeus, I renew my confidence in your powerful intercession and your unwavering presence with those who persevere in prayer. I believe that God honors steadfast faith and responds according to his perfect wisdom. Help me continue forward with courage, patience. Prepare my heart for what God is bringing forth in his time. May this continued prayer sustain my spirit and deepen my faith. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I return again with a heart that has learned to breathe through uncertainty and to trust even when the horizon remains unclear. Each step of this prayer deepens my reliance on God and reminds me that faith grows strongest when it is exercised without visible assurance. You know how the soul stretches when answers are delayed, and how patience becomes a daily offering placed before heaven. I ask you to strengthen my interior life so that calm replaces restlessness and confidence replaces fear. Remain close to me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to surrender my journey to God. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle and steadfast witness of Christ's power, you persevered through trials that tested both courage and endurance. You followed the Lord not for comfort but for truth, trusting that obedience would bear fruit beyond your lifetime. In moments when my own efforts feel small or unnoticed, remind me that God values faithfulness more than visible success. Help me continue walking the path of integrity, even when recognition is absent. May obedience become my anchor while I await God's provision. Beloved intercessor, I place before you the quiet frustration that arises when progress feels slow and expectations remain unmet. Waiting often invites doubt to whisper discouraging thoughts that question whether perseverance is worthwhile. I ask you to help me transform frustration into prayer rather than allowing it to harden my heart. Teach me to see waiting as a sacred space where faith is refined and strengthened. May hope remain alive within me through trust rather than outcome. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of those who feel cornered by circumstance, I lift before you moments when options appear limited and the future feels constrained. Financial and professional uncertainty can create a sense of confinement that weighs heavily on the spirit. I ask you to intercede so that God may expand my vision beyond present limitations. Help me trust that apparent boundaries often precede divine breakthroughs. May inner freedom grow even before external change arrives. Holy Apostle, I ask you to intercede for emotional steadiness when uncertainty creates inner turbulence. Prolonged stress can cause emotional swings that exhaust the heart and cloud judgment. I ask you to bring equilibrium and reassurance so that emotions do not dictate decisions. Teach me to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively during pressure. May peace guide my thoughts and actions each day. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion of those who endure long trials, I ask you to look upon the fatigue that accumulates when effort continues without visible reward. Weariness can quietly erode motivation if not replenished through faith and rest. I ask you to help me recognize when to pause, pray, and renew strength through God's presence. Teach me that rest is not surrender, but preparation for continued perseverance. May renewed strength arise through trust and prayer. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me maintain humility during this season of need. Financial difficulty can challenge pride and self-image, making vulnerability feel uncomfortable. I ask you to teach me humility that does not diminish dignity but strengthens faith. Help me accept help, guidance, and support when offered without shame. May humility open my heart more fully to God's grace. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful intercessor, I entrust to you the fear of disappointment that sometimes discourages hope. Fear of being let down can prevent the heart from fully trusting God's promises. I ask you to help me risk hope again, despite past disappointments. Teach me that trusting God is always worthwhile, regardless of past outcomes. May courage to hope replace fear of disappointment. Holy Apostle, I pray for wisdom in managing expectations during times of uncertainty. Unrealistic expectations can intensify discouragement, when progress does not match desire. I ask you to help me align expectations with God's timing rather than human urgency. Teach me to remain open to outcomes that differ from my original plans. May wisdom guide my anticipation and trust. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of hope. I ask you to guard my heart against impatience that can arise during prolonged waiting. Impatience often seeks immediate relief at the expense of lasting peace. I ask you to help me cultivate patience, rooted in trust, rather than resignation. Teach me to remain calm and faithful while God's work unfolds. May patience become a steady companion rather than a struggle. Beloved Apostle, I place before you the desire to remain consistent in faith, even when circumstances fluctuate. External instability can challenge inner consistency if trust is not firmly rooted in God. I ask you to help me establish stability through prayer, reflection, and reliance on God's promises. Teach me to remain anchored regardless of changing conditions. May consistency strengthen my faith journey. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of Christ, I ask you to intercede for renewed clarity when confusion threatens direction. Confusion can paralyze progress and create unnecessary fear if not addressed through prayer. I ask you to help me recognize God's guidance, even when it appears subtle or gradual. Teach me to trust the clarity that emerges through patience rather than haste. May discernment guide my steps forward. Holy Intercessor, I ask you to protect my heart from self-doubt that arises during seasons of struggle. Self-doubt can quietly undermine confidence and weaken resolve if left unchecked. I ask you to help me see myself through God's compassionate gaze rather than harsh self-judgment. Teach me to trust that God works through imperfect people and circumstances. May confidence rooted in faith replace doubt within me. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion in perseverance, I ask you to help me maintain a spirit of gratitude even when progress feels limited. Gratitude keeps the heart open to grace and prevents discouragement from taking hold. Help me recognize blessings that remain present despite difficulty. Teach me to thank God, not only for answers, but also for strength to endure. May gratitude nourish hope within me. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I lift before you the longing for stability that rests deeply within my heart. Stability brings peace, clarity, and the ability to plan with confidence. I ask you to intercede so that God may establish firm ground beneath my feet. Help me trust that stability begins internally through faith before it manifests externally. May peace grow within me as I wait. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me remain compassionate toward others, even while navigating my own challenges. Hardship can narrow focus and limit empathy if faith does not guide the heart. I desire to remain attentive to the needs and struggles of those around me. Help me offer kindness and encouragement even when resources feel scarce. May love continue to flow freely through my action. Holy Apostle, I pray for renewed trust in God's provision during moments when needs feel urgent. Urgency can intensify fear and weaken patience if not surrendered to God. I ask you to help me trust that God responds at the right moment with perfect wisdom. Teach me to remain calm and prayerful during urgency. May trust replace anxiety as I wait. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I place before you all who continue this prayer journey, carrying their own burdens and uncertainties related to work, finances, and future security. Many feel overwhelmed and unsure how to proceed. I ask you to intercede for each one, so that God may grant strength, guidance, and peace. Unite us in perseverance and shared faith. May we continue forward together, trusting in God's mercy and timing. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I come before you once more with a heart that has been softened by waiting and shaped by trust, learning slowly that faith is often forged in silence rather than in sudden change. Through this long journey of prayer, I have begun to understand that God's work is not always loud or immediate, but deep, intentional, and perfectly timed. You know how the soul longs for reassurance when answers delay, and how easy it is to question the purpose of endurance. I ask you to steady my heart, so that impatience does not undo the work God is accomplishing within me. Remain close to me, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I continue to surrender control and grow in trust. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle and companion of Christ. You witnessed how the Lord often worked in ways that defied human expectation. You saw miracles unfold, not always according to urgency, but according to divine wisdom and love. In moments when I struggle to understand why my prayers seem unanswered, remind me that God's silence is never absence. Help me trust that even now, God is aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities beyond my awareness. May confidence in God's hidden work replace anxiety within my heart. Beloved intercessor, I place before you the moments when discouragement tries to disguise itself as realism, convincing me that hope is naive or misplaced. Discouragement often speaks softly, yet it carries the power to dim faith if not confronted. I ask you to help me recognize discouragement for what it is and respond with prayer rather than resignation. Teach me to protect hope as a sacred gift rather than abandon it for comfort. May hope remain alive and resilient within me. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of those who feel worn down by prolonged struggle, I lift before you the emotional fatigue that can settle quietly over time. Long seasons of uncertainty can drain enthusiasm and leave the heart vulnerable to despair. I ask you to intercede for renewal that reaches beyond physical rest and touches the spirit itself. Help me receive God's strength daily, even when circumstances remain unchanged. May renewal flow into my life through trust and prayer. Holy Apostle, I ask you to help me remain grounded when fear attempts to dominate my thoughts about the future. Fear often projects worst-case scenarios that steal peace and weaken confidence. I ask you to calm my imagination and anchor my mind in God's promises, rather than in uncertainty. Teach me to live fully in the present moment, while entrusting tomorrow to God. May peace guard my heart against fearful speculation. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion of those who persevere, I ask you to intercede for clarity when doubts arise about my direction and purpose. Uncertainty can blur vision and make even simple choices feel overwhelming. I ask you to help me trust that clarity unfolds gradually through prayer, patience, and obedience. Guide me step by step rather than all at once, so that faith remains active. May trust replace the need for complete certainty. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I bring before you the temptation to measure progress solely by visible results. When outcomes are delayed, it is easy to believe that effort is wasted or unnoticed. I ask you to help me recognize growth that occurs internally, where faith deepens and character strengthens. Teach me to value transformation over speed and obedience over immediate success. May I learn to see progress through God's eyes rather than human expectations. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful intercessor, I ask you to protect my heart from resentment towards circumstances that feel unfair or undeserved. Resentment quietly hardens the spirit and obstructs grace if allowed to take root. I ask you to help me release resentment through forgiveness and trust in God's justice. Teach me to believe that God's plan accounts for every injustice and redeems every loss. May freedom replace heaviness within my heart. Holy Apostle, I entrust to you the struggle of remaining hopeful when prayers are repeated without visible change. Repetition can feel discouraging if faith is not continually renewed. I ask you to help me understand that repeated prayer is not failure, but persistence that God honors. Strengthen my resolve to continue praying with sincerity rather than fatigue. May endurance in prayer deepen my relationship with God. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of hope, I ask you to help me remain open to unexpected answers that differ from my original expectations. Sometimes God responds in ways that surprise the heart and challenge assumptions. I ask you to prepare me to recognize and accept blessings that arrive in unfamiliar forms. Teach me flexibility and faith, so that disappointment does not blind me to grace. May openness allow me to receive God's gifts fully. Beloved Apostle, I place before you the desire to remain emotionally balanced. When circumstances fluctuate unpredictably, instability can create emotional highs and lows that exhaust the spirit, if not grounded in faith. I ask you to help me cultivate inner steadiness through trust in God's unchanging nature. Teach me to remain calm amid change and consistent amid uncertainty. May balance become a fruit of faith within me. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful servant of Christ, I ask you to intercede for restoration of confidence when prolonged struggle has weakened self-belief. Financial and professional challenges can quietly erode confidence if not met with compassion and trust. I ask you to help me rebuild confidence, rooted not in achievement, but in God's love and calling. Teach me to see setbacks as seasons rather than definitions. May confidence rise again through faith and perseverance. Holy Intercessor, I ask you to guard my heart against isolation that can arise when struggles feel personal and misunderstood. Isolation often deepens pain and weakens resilience if connection is lost. I ask you to help me remain connected to God and open to supportive relationships. Teach me that vulnerability can become a bridge rather than a weakness. May connection strengthen my spirit during this journey. Saint Jude Thaddeus, companion in faith, I ask you to help me maintain joy that coexists with waiting. Joy does not deny difficulty, but testifies to trust in God's goodness. I ask you to help me notice moments of grace, laughter, and peace, even amid uncertainty. Teach me that joy can be an act of faith, rather than a reaction to circumstance. May joy quietly sustain my hope. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I entrust to you the longing for breakthrough that continues to live within my heart. This longing is not born of greed, but of a desire for stability, dignity, and the ability to provide and serve faithfully. I ask you to keep this longing purified by trust rather than anxiety. Help me surrender the timing and manner of breakthrough to God. May hope remain expectant without becoming restless. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to strengthen my trust in God's promises during moments when evidence feels scarce. Faith is often tested most deeply when assurance is absent. I ask you to help me trust God's word above my emotions or circumstances. Teach me to rely on divine truth rather than temporary perception. May trust grow stronger as I wait. Holy Apostle, I lift before you all who continue this prayer journey, carrying burdens of uncertainty, financial pressure, and professional instability. Many feel discouraged, weary, and unsure how much longer they can endure. I ask you to intercede so that God may renew their strength and restore their hope, and unite us in perseverance and shared trust. May we continue forward together, upheld by faith and prayer. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, I renew my confidence in your powerful intercession and your constant presence with those who persist in prayer. I believe that God is preparing answers even now, beyond what I can see or imagine. Help me continue forward with patience, humility, and trust. Prepare my heart for what God will reveal in His perfect time. May this continued prayer sustain my faith and deepen my reliance on God. Glorious Saint Jude Thaddeus, in this final moment of prayer, I come before you with a heart laid completely bare, no longer holding back fear, expectation, or control, but offering everything in surrender to God. This long journey of prayer has carried my worries, my hopes, my fatigue, and my faith into the presence of heaven. And now I stand, trusting that nothing has been wasted. You have walked with me through every word, every sigh, and every silent tear, faithfully carrying my intentions before the merciful heart of Jesus. I believe with deep conviction that heaven has heard this prayer, and that divine grace has already begun its work. Remain with me now, Saint Jude Thaddeus, as I place my full trust in God's will. Saint Jude Thaddeus, faithful apostle and intimate friend of Jesus Christ, I thank you for your constant intercession and unwavering presence throughout this prayer. You are the patron of impossible and desperate causes because you reveal God's power when human strength is exhausted. I place before you my financial needs, my desire for dignified work, and every difficult case that has weighed upon my life. I trust that you have gathered each request with care and presented them before the throne of God. I surrender the outcome completely, believing that God knows what I need even more than I do. Beloved intercessor, in this final offering I give you not only my petitions, but my entire life. I place in your hands my past with its wounds and lessons, my present with its uncertainties and responsibilities, and my future with all its unknown paths. I surrender my fears about provision, stability, and security, trusting that God's providence is faithful and perfect. Teach me to live in trust, even when answers unfold slowly. May my life become a testimony of perseverance, faith, and hope. Saint Jude Thaddeus, defender of the afflicted and comforter of the weary, I ask you to remain near me after this prayer ends. Do not allow me to return to fear, doubt, or discouragement once silence resumes. Help me remember that prayer continues through trust, patience, and faithful action. Strengthen me to walk forward with confidence, knowing that God's grace is already at work. May I never forget that with God nothing is impossible. Holy Apostle, I pray for all those who have journeyed through this prayer with me, each carrying their own burdens of financial pressure, work instability, and difficult circumstances. You know their names, their struggles, and the silent cries of their hearts. I ask you to intercede for each one, so that no prayer offered in faith remains unanswered. May God grant them provision, direction, peace, and renewed strength. Unite us all in hope and trust in God's mercy. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to help me remain faithful even after this moment of prayer, when daily challenges return and patience is tested. Teach me to wait with serenity, to work with integrity, and to trust without fear. Help me recognize signs of God's grace as they appear, even in small and unexpected ways. May gratitude replace anxiety and confidence replace worry. Let my faith continue to grow beyond this prayer. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to guard my heart against despair if answers do not appear immediately. Remind me that delay is not denial, and that God's timing is guided by perfect love and wisdom. Help me remain anchored in hope during waiting. Teach me to trust God's plan even when I do not fully understand it. May perseverance become my strength and faith my refuge. Saint Jude Thaddeus, courageous witness of Christ, I ask you to help me live with renewed purpose after this prayer. Let my actions reflect trust rather than fear, and generosity rather than scarcity. Help me to continue seeking honest work, responsible solutions, and peaceful choices guided by faith. May my life honor God in both success and struggle. Let my journey inspire others to trust in divine providence. Holy Intercessor, I surrender to you every impossible and difficult case that remains unresolved. You know the doors that must open, the chains that must be broken, and the paths that must be revealed. I trust that God's power surpasses every limitation I face. I place these matters fully into God's hands through your intercession. May divine solutions unfold according to God's perfect will. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I ask you to protect my family and loved ones from anxiety, division, and fear caused by financial or professional hardship. Surround our home with peace, trust, and mutual support. Help us remain united in faith and hope during every season. May our home be strengthened rather than shaken by trials. Let love and trust reign within our heart. Beloved Apostle, I ask you to help me remain attentive to God's voice as He guides my steps forward. Teach me to listen through prayer, reflection, and obedience. Help me discern opportunities that align with God's will and release those that do not. May wisdom guide my decisions and peace confirm my path. Let my journey unfold under divine direction. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I entrust to you my need for stability and provision, trusting that God desires his children to live without constant fear. Help me trust that God is my provider and sustainer. Teach me to rely on divine abundance rather than scarcity. May security grow within my heart through faith before it manifests outwardly. Let trust anchor my soul. Holy Apostle, I ask you to strengthen my faith for the days ahead when prayer may feel quieter and patience more difficult. Help me remember this moment of surrender whenever doubt arises. Teach me to return to trust again and again. May faith become my habit and prayer my refuge. Let perseverance shape my spirit. Saint Jude Thaddeus, I give thanks for every grace already received, even those I may not yet recognize. I thank God for sustaining me through uncertainty and for guiding me through this season of prayer. Gratitude fills my heart as I trust that God's plan is unfolding with love. Help me live in thanksgiving rather than fear. May praise rise from my life daily. Beloved Saint Jude Thaddeus, I now unite my heart fully with God's will, offering this final prayer with trust and surrender. I release every outcome into God's hands, confident in his mercy and care. I choose faith over fear and hope over despair. Remain with me as I walk forward in trust. Let God be glorified in my life. And now, with confidence and humility, I lift my voice to God in the prayer taught to us by Jesus himself. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Saint Jude Thaddeus, glorious apostle and powerful intercessor, I thank you for hearing this prayer and carrying it before the heart of Jesus. I trust that God is already working in my life, in my finances, in my work, and in every difficult case I have surrendered. May your protection, guidance, and intercession remain with me always. May my faith never fail, and my hope never fade.